Hello, in this video, this coding session, and in this one, I will go through Next.js documentation and try to do some of the steps in this documentation. As I mentioned multiple times on my social media accounts, I'm trying to get familiar with this framework. And also maybe at some point start turning their tutorials or documentation, which is very nice, into the video format. So main reason because I do it myself, I go through it for myself, and probably it will be nice to have also a video version. And for today, I want to start with the basics, which is getting started part. I will just do whatever explained here, and we'll see where we get from here. First of all, I have most of the items mentioned in this documentation, like npx, yarn, and npm, etc., etc. If you don't have, please make sure to install them. I will put every related link in the description or in the comments, depending where you watch this video. I will gather some of the feedbacks or comments here as well. So let me do. All the code base will be also available. First of all, let's start with a part that's from Next.js. First of all, their website. This is the documentation. Also, right now they are, I think today or maybe yesterday, they are hosting this Next.js conference. I watched the first video keynote. It's very nice. If you are interested, please check. I think they have very nice. I watched this one. This is mainly where they list new features of Next.js. I believe it's Next.js 10, which is released quite recently. Also, they have this Discord channels you can join, and as well as this GitHub discussions. So if you're interested, if you have questions, you can check this discussions as well. So now let's get started. So what I first do, I have all this. I will jump immediately here. Let's do. Let me run this. Yeah, first of all, I want to check what's my flow. Let's move to the toots for now. Yeah, this will take, I guess, some time. Let's call it session 1. Yeah, while it's installing, let's check our next steps. Once we have, they also provide alternative method of installing, which is manual. If you are familiar and feel comfortable with, with doing all this manual, you can also do it this way. Let's see, manual steps, scripts refer to different stages of. Okay, so I think we have this application now. I will move to the directory and open this directory in Visual Studio Code. So we can go through the structure. So we have pages, API, public, styles, gitignore, package JSON. So they also had JIT, which is in my case it's not needed because I usually have root JIT folder, so I believe we can just remove it. Next, let's see, And I believe in the documentation in this part they are explaining multiple ways of multiple scripts that we can run. For example, this is what we will need to start, so I can do it right away. Let's do yarn dev. It's a yarn dev and also npm run dev, depending on what you use. I will try to stick with yarn because I think it's mostly used nowadays. Yeah, I say nowadays because mostly I code in backend, so for me it's nowadays. So let's go to the localhost, echo. Yeah, so this is what we get locally. Get started by editing pages index.js, and I believe if we go to the documentation, we can do it here. So Next.js build around the concept of pages. A page is a React component exported from a JS, JSX, TypeScript, TypeScript-X file in the pages directory. So I believe their building block is React component. It's also explained well in this video, in this keynote video. And yeah, we can read more about it. I am a little familiar in one of my companies where I worked. I did some of low-level development with React components. If you are not familiar, please read it through. It's a very interesting concept. And since, if you are also interested in Next.js, I think this is good to know what is it actually. And also React, so they using React as a baseline is one of their main reasons I want to get familiar with this framework, because I'm a little familiar with with React. I liked React, and I believe I can use it for my projects in a front-end part. So yeah, if you are interested, please check. And so let's continue for now. Pages are associated with a route based on their file name. This is a very good concept actually, because I did another example where I had to receive some input from user, and they also have a way that you name a file in a way that it also can receive some inputs. We'll come to this maybe later. So how you name file is also used as a route, so you don't need additional file for routing. I don't know if they have, so if you need, you can probably do it. Let me see, dynamic routes, introducing, so far it's mainly based on file names and also file path, files location. Shell operating. Yeah, you have some control. I will need to go through it. I don't want to say something not valid, but it seems you have some ways of doing managing these routes. So let's go to the pages. As I said, this is like coding session. I am trying to do it. I have shorter version of this video with the main ideas, main concepts. So without any waterfalls, it's just a documentation in a form of video. If you are interested, please check description for links so you will not miss it. So for now, let's add this. So I want to continue and I want to add this. For example, page is mapped to about. You can even add dynamic routes with file names. So let's go back to our source code. Pages, we have pages, and we will put index.js. So maybe I can take also this. Yes, index.js file. Okay, so we already have it. Of course we just populated it. This is our index.js. I will just override it. I want to stick to the documentation. So let's remove everything, add this, and we can say they have live reload. So once we make change, it's immediately reflected, so you don't have to restart this development server. I always found it very nice, especially from my Go and Python. I think in Python it was always almost the case. I don't remember exactly, but with Go, I have one project that I support in Go language, which is web. And when I do local development, I have always like, maybe I don't use some framework that does it, but in my case, I have to restart server again if I want to see my changes on a web. So which takes that additional time. So maybe, but as I say, maybe there is a library for Go as well that does it, but having it by default is very nice. Okay, let me continue. So we have this index with some simple content. This is our content. Let's go to the source code to see what's happening. So we have function named homepage, which returns HTML code, and we export this function. So quite straightforward. To start developing your application, run npm. Yeah, we already talked about this. So it will start on this port. So you need to run, just to repeat, so you need to run this on a folder of your application, in a folder of your application, and it will be executed on this port. Yeah, we already discussed, like it will automatically bundle, so you don't have to restart. There is static files serving on public, and it's mapped to the root. This is nice to know, meaning that if I go, I want to check. So everything here is a public, and let me check like this. Is it icon? Yeah. So I can access it, and let's go back. Okay, so this is also nice. So in case if we want to release it, we don't need to do anything. I mean, probably we need to run some commands to make it ready for deployment. But you don't have to put anything additionally, which is very nice. And also, I know they have different, like you can do client-side rendering, server-side rendering. And if you depend on external data, you can get it in a build time or on execution time. I will talk about this. Yeah, I'm talking about this part. So it's nice that it's supported by framework itself, and also through the API of this of a framework. So yeah, we will come to this topic as well. Let's go back to our initial steps. And I believe we covered most of the items. So we have page, it's very simple. Maybe we can move on to the next one. So pages. I will cover this one as well, and then I will take some break and maybe continue later. So let's go on. In Next.js, a page is React component, blah, blah, blah. We already know this. Each page is associated with a route based on its file name, based on a file name. Yeah, let's do this. So we already know that depending on how we name our file, it will be taken as a path. So meaning that if I have about and I put this code, to access this page, I need to go to /about. So index, it's by default that if you can name index, it's a root, and about is about. So okay, so it's clear. Let's move on. And again, you don't need to restart anything. It will restart automatically. So pages with dynamic route. Next.js supports pages with dynamic routes. For example, if you create a file called post.ij, then it will be accessible. So this is a very nice concept. So to learn more, okay, so pre-rendering. By default, Next.js is pre-renders every page. This means that Next.js generates HTML for each page in advance instead of having it all done by client side. The reason why I'm trying to use Next.js. So each generated HTML is associated with minimal JavaScript code necessary for that page. When a page is loaded by the browser, its JavaScript code runs and makes the page fully interactive. Okay, so meaning that maybe I need to explain. The easiest way to explain this is to go, and then see it in action, is to go, I think I already mentioned this in one of my recent videos, but easier ways to see it is you go to the page content and you see your about as it is. I mean, so if I add a bit more code, so let's say it's h1, and we put here, and I go, so this is h1, like header, and usually when you do it with a JavaScript framework, what happens is that your page loads, and then browser executes JavaScript, and then you see result. Meaning that by default, when you go to the source code, you don't see all this happening because it's added dynamically by JavaScript. Usually you can access it here. I mean, if there is some changes, you should see it immediately here. But if you go to this one, which is returned by the server, in our case, it's our local server, you don't see most of the code which is in dynamic JavaScript code or rendered by JavaScript. And what's explained here, that with Next.js, this is the main idea behind Next.js. Everything you put, it will be rendered on a server side, and then you will get final source code. But in case if you have some interactive content, they will also take care of this and have, as I call it, minimal JavaScript to make this interactive part possible, to make this part work. Saying that if you have button to show some other element or hide, I think this will be interactively built in. It will be automatically built in your source code, final source code, so you can still do it on a client. And we can, let's see in action. So if I go to the source code and check our about, let me search for it, about, yeah, I need to restart. So I need to refresh. So this is our source code, and it is React component that we receive from server. It's rendered automatically on our client side. I know it might be sound a bit complicated. I believe in more advanced examples we can see it more clearly. But for now, let's continue. And in this part, two forms of pre-rendering. Next.js has two forms of pre-rendering: static generation and server-side rendering. The difference is when it generates HTML, at the build time, and it will be reused each request. Meaning that when we build our project, we will have output files, and for each request, we just will serve these files. And server-side rendering is HTML generated on each request, meaning that we have our build, we deploy it, and each time we request some pages, it will be rendered server-side for each request. In parallel, Next.js lets you choose which rendering form you would like to use. For each page, you can create a hybrid Next.js app by using static generation for most pages and using server-side rendering for others. We recommend using static generation over server-side rendering for performance reasons. Statically generated pages can be cached by CDN with no extra configuration to boost performance. However, in some cases, server-side rendering might be the only option. You can also use client-side rendering along with static generation or server-side rendering. That means some parts of the page can be rendered entirely with client-side JavaScript. I will cover this data fetching a bit more. I don't want to go into it in our first session. I already did some examples. For me it worked really cool in my case. But let me quickly try to explain what's meant here. Let's say you have some website. In my case, this is a project where I want to use it. And what I do here, when you open, I fetch some data from database. I build up this page that you see, and send it to client. And then client renders it. It's a very simple HTML. But let's say I have about page. In this case, I don't have it, but let's say I have about page, which is almost the same. Like whenever you open this page, I think we can use this one. Also my page from my website. So this is, so in this case, it comes from WordPress, which is CMS, meaning that each time it will check with database and etc. But in ideal case, what's explained here, to get some performance, it's explained here, to get some performance boost, ideally you would like generate this page once, and each time when you have a request, you just render this page. You just send this page, so without rendering it again or generating it again for each request. Because this page doesn't change, it's always the same. It's about, right? Or let's say you have contact page, and you don't have to generate it each time. It's always the same, unless you have some parts. Let's say like I put here that so far I have written 100 articles, for example, right? And I get this number from server and from database, for example. In this case, I would get this data on each request and then render it, meaning that I cannot make this part static. But as what's explained here, so you can, at some point you can mix them. Like you have most of your page static, and for some part you use some interactive content and then get it from server, for example. You can also that means that some parts of the page can be rendered entirely by client-side JavaScript. But one remark that client-side JavaScript doesn't always mean that you need to go to the server, right? It can be like you have some animations, for example, or you have some interactive content which is total on client side, but you don't want it to be like built once. Like you want this part to stay dynamic and be interactive for the user. Like or shortly, you want this part with JavaScript, so you need this JavaScript on client. So in this case, you will have to mix it anyway. Yeah. So since there was, okay, so let me see, 2 forms, static generation, WordPress example. So in this case, you can see already some examples. Let me see. Blog starter data sanity example. Yeah, let's check WordPress demo, for example. Okay, so this is whole source code with examples. Okay, pages, posts. So this is an example of this is what I explained shortly here, that you can get some input on your road, like post 1, post 2. In this case, they use slug, which looks like this is, or if you have, let's say, if you open an article, so this is slug. You usually generate it from title or etc., and it's URL friendly. So and here in this example we can use, so we can see that this file is named, I lost a bit, slug.js, meaning that we will get this part from URL, And yeah, so router, fallback. I want to see where is this like, yeah. So we can see how here is how you access it. Backend post. Params. Okay, so this is param. Yeah, sorry. This is how you access it. So when you have get static props, you receive these params, and here you will be your slug that you pass to the page, and yeah, and then you return it as, and then let's see, we have header, some titles. Yeah. I think this is a cool example. Let me see what else they have. Pages, examples, API. Yeah, pretty much everything is with examples. That's very nice. Let me continue with the page. So if a page uses static generation, the page HTML is generated at build time. Yeah, we already know this. That means that in production, the page HTML is generated when you run next build. This HTML will be reused on each request. So it will be generated once and reused for each request. So we have seen this, meaning that when you generate, you don't need any other data. And here is the interesting part. So you have static generation. So meaning that when you run this next build, you need to generate this page, and you depend on some data. So let's okay, give me a moment. Yeah, and on pre-render, so allows you to export, and the string function called get static params from the sale file. This function gets called at build time and lets you pass fetch data to the page's props. Yeah, this is a really nice example. So meaning that, let's say, if we depend on some external data to build our page, we use this function get static props. We fetch our data and etc. etc. And then please keep in mind that this is build time. So you do it once, you generate this page. Let's say when I first go through this documentation, I was a bit confused because let's say this external source, right? So you want to, on your page, you want to have list of the names, city names, for example, for some country. So you, and usually these names are long, like they are static, they don't change that often. So what you do, you request the city names, you form your posts, or in your case, city names, and then you return it in props. And then when you render this page, you can receive this posts, which you send here, and then, for example, render a list out of this list of the city names or posts. By doing this, and again, one remark. So this is at build time, meaning that you will do it only once when you build your application. And once you build your application, this will be static page, and each request it will same city names. But let's say if you have dynamic posts and you do a lot of posts and you want to reflect this each time on your page without building it, so that meaning that this static generation is not for you. So you will need to do server-side rendering, fetch these pages every time, and render the page. So let's see what's next. So we got the static props. With data, the entry page depends on external data. depends on external. So isn't this the same scenario? Your page content depends on external data. Page path depends on external. Okay, so path. So you receive some ID. This is also another cool example. Let's say, again with city example, you need to receive country name to get cities for this country. So in this case, you will get this country as a path name. As a path name, and then you pass it to your external source, saying that country is this, and then you receive name of the cities for this country. And of course, interesting part here is how to receive this country name. As you can see here, it's in params. It's in params of these static props. So in ID in this case, it can be slug, it can be country, and etc. etc. And when you should, I think we covered it a bit, but when you should use this static generation, it's marketing pages, blog posts, and by blog posts, I gave you another example, but usually, if it's personal blog, you don't have much, a lot of content, so you can each time you have a new content, new article, new post, you generate it, upload to your server, so you don't have to render it again. And I actually use it for one of my pages. So this is fully static page, but whenever I have a new article or new link, I add this part, and then I generate this content. It's done automatically by GitHub, but it's generated once, and every time you request a new page, it will be it's returned from static content. So let me see what's left here for now. Blog posts, e-commerce, product listings, help, and documentation. I believe for this video, for this session, I can pause for now and continue next one with server-side rendering.